Right. Welcome everyone to another episode of Montessori Microphone, which is the podcast of Montessori Makers Group. Today I am very excited to be here with Erin Lopez Brooks. Erin is the founder and owner of Tier 3 Montessori, which is a wonderful organization which focuses on serving children who have varying needs. And Erin has done amazing things to be able to bring Montessori to these children in an environment, both in their classroom, outside of their classroom, and we're going to learn a little bit more about how this wonderful work happens today. Welcome, Erin.
Hi, thanks.
Great. So first off, can you tell us a little bit about Tier 3 Montessori and how your approach aligns with Montessori?
Yeah, absolutely. I think from my training, I was trained in Atlanta with Jay McKeever and Phyllis Potter Lewis and many others. Very, very integral to my life. I it was as you all know from being Montessori trained, it's pretty life changing. So yeah, I do try to hold strongly to those roots, to the training. If anyone's ever read the book, Who's Montessori Do You Practice? That is very much in line with what we're trying to do here. If you want to think of it as, um, and I do invite anyone to come in and observe anytime. So if you want to think about like pre Montessori, like pre like school readiness, um, for children who maybe have never been in a Montessori environment or who are just new to it in any kind of way, that's the kind of um, thing that we do here. So we use those principles and approaches with children who need a little boost to get to that level. And I don't even want to say level, but and then my student teaching also was an integral part of. Sorry, I'm trying to block the wind, so if you see my uh, I it decided to get windy right as I got in here. So I'm trying to like block this.
Of
I don't
course.
know if you guys can hear. I'm not used to wearing my earbuds like this. Sorry.
Oh yeah, there's
So
nothing covering the sound, so it's great.
okay, good. Then I can stop doing the weird sign language or whatever. Yeah. So definitely, um, every day is my new recommitment to Montessori, to what I learned, to my albums, to my all the training, the theory, and then I have to adapt it all to the child in front of me, who I know has either been kicked out of Montessori schools themselves, or whose family is trying to get them enrolled into a Montessori school, or who maybe is on a wait list for another Montessori school. They the child who's in front of me, I have to apply all of this to their experience. And so it feels very Montessori.
Sounds like you're doing the big work of really making sure that Montessori is accessible to all children.
Yeah, it is. That's what our goal is. We're trying.
That's so great. So when I was reading through some of the things about your organization, it says that you emphasize a whole child, whole family approach. How do you define that and what does it look like in practice?
Yeah, that's super cool. That's my favorite, one of my favorite parts. Uh, whole child. So we know about whole child in Montessori. We know about, physical, emotional, cognitive, like all the different levels, spiritual. And then with the whole child when in because I am in the medical field, not medical field, but it is an insurance-based, insurance-funded practice. So I do have to also look at other parts of the whole child, which include the whole family. So that every every family, I don't know, intake sounds so distant, so disconnected, but every family exploration and enrollment starts with an interview. And so that is, we don't even just start with like typical enrollment paperwork. Like I know schools have that, that's great, but we have like an actual sit down discussion, conversation, interview with the whole team and really get into the concerns of the family, the history of the family, like learning history of the child, any kind of behavioral history. We start with the strengths of the child. Like what does this child love? What do you love about your child? What describe a day and give me an idea. Tell me a story about the time you did this or something. So it just becomes don't know, an adventure, kind of like a shared adventure. It's this child, a snapshot in their lives, because I know they won't be here forever. They're not with us forever, and it's really meant to be a short term thing. So it's maybe whole child, whole family, but it's not like their whole life. So we're only here for a moment, but we want to try to capture all the parts of, yes, the development, yes, the physical and emotional, but also the past, like from birth, even pre-birth, to any family dynamics, any kind of family. You never know what happens in a person's life. So yeah, whole means like anything, everything.
Wow. That's amazing. It's like in order to do the great work, you really have to know who the child and the family are that you're working with so that you can then usher them on to their next beautiful experience.
Absolutely.
So then thinking about that next experience and how Montessori really believes in independence and self-directed learning, how does that work with children who might have some specialized needs or who are working on behavior and like getting to be part of a traditional Montessori classroom? What does that look like?
Yeah, that is okay. So I know I want to try to draw up an example. But yeah, for the behavioral, how do I describe this? This is where it comes back to the prepared environment. I don't even know too many children with real behavioral issues. It's mostly contextual behavior or
Mhm.
I don't even want to say issues, but it's the context, it's the prepared environment. So that's what I study. My area of research is the context of behavior. And I love the part of Montessori that we all need, observing. We observe the child. We're observing outward behavior. So a lot of people, I think that's kind of, I don't, maybe I'm not, it's a taboo kind of thing. Even though our whole entire education is built on observation, we're kind of also not supposed to talk about observation in a different kind of sense. There is more to the child, anyone, adult, child, than just what we see on the surface. That's true. I acknowledge that, or science acknowledges that as well. But what I love too is that when we do make these Montessori adjustments, these prepared environment adjustments, and adjustments to the adult, we see major changes and shifts in a child's behaviors. I mean, that's all we can really measure from a standpoint of being an external observer as an assistant or a guide or admin. We only have the outward to assess. Not that we're assessing in any kind of a judgmental way, but we have to make in the moment decisions, and that's really hard because I think there's studies, um, teachers make like challenges and decisions together or whatever, but yeah, so we have to make all these tiny micro momentary decisions, and we are only going based off the most minute, like facial expression change or like a demeanor. Like, how do we pick up on that? It's just something we observe. So, um, now I guess I forgot your original question. Sorry, that's my own ADHD.
No, it's quite all right. It's
Yeah,
about the principles of independence and self-directed learning and how that works with
got
children.
got it. And so when the prepared environment, sorry, this I definitely was off track. Um, when it comes to their prepared environment, we can help support them, and you all know already as Montessorians, to provide that independence and autonomy because that's what we do. That's just our profession. It's almost hard to not do that once we've been doing it for so long. We set it up
Mhm.
so they can access things themselves, and not just things, but anything. Any experience they want to have. They have their own autonomy, their own independence, and yeah, it's all behavioral. So it's like I don't know how to separate the behavior part from that. It's action. It's all the action words.
I think that's a really important point. I think sometimes as educators, Montessorians, whomever, we can really separate what we know and see it as the canon and like this is the way that we do the things. And sometimes
Hmm.
we forget that everything is based on observing the behavior of the child and responding to that. I
Right.
think that's so amazing. What do you think are the most important factors when we are creating a Montessori environment that is inclusive for children who might have various diagnoses? Like, how do you address this in your everyday work?
Yeah, the inclusiveness, the inclusivity, that is so much more difficult than I originally thought of getting into this work because I just thought, oh yeah, I'm accepting of everyone, and I am, it's true. But is everyone else accepting of everyone else? And then it becomes layered upon layered upon layered. It's like, oh my goodness. And then there's the whole system, and that's a whole nother conversation. So yeah, it's on access, on forget about equity and access. That's a whole, we would be here for days.
Indeed.
That yeah. For as far as day-to-day inclusion, uh, and that's hard for me to even imagine too, because we have so much acceptance, like peer to peer, adult to peer, adult to adult. But I've known different times throughout the few years we've been here that there are, I think I can pinpoint it. I mean, I don't know. But right now, my mind goes to like adult flexibility because, and I might say a different thing in a year or two from now, but for right now where I'm at, I see when the adult is flexible to be able to reach around and make room for these people, families, other adults, neurodivergence, whatever is happening in their world, even weather changes. It doesn't even have to be behavioral. Just anything, if they can have this flexibility and kind of open mindedness for exploration, almost like a curiosity, then we can go somewhere. We can work with that. When we, with the children, with inclusion or with anything, when I see an obstacle, it's when there's a shutdown, when there's like a block, like a like the wall was put up, like there's a rigidity that there people don't want to cross, which is okay. Boundaries are awesome. I love boundaries. Boundaries are super awesome and amazing. So I'm not saying don't have boundaries, but there's something about a boundary that when it becomes too inflexible, then that's where I saw children, in this case, I'll bring the conversation back to the child in front of us. Then I see there's no willingness to work with them and their needs and their strengths. And then we just have to call it a day and just have switch gears, reroute, reassess, um, recalibrate, and start over. Because the child, if they're paired with an adult who there's that resistance, then there really is no more growth moving forward in that day because it just becomes all about that resistance. So I'm just thinking in terms of a classroom environment, when there's one teacher, one assistant in a whole classroom, that can go on day by day by day by day by day. Even though if you, every day is a new day, there's still, if there's that resistance there, it can just affect, there just needs to be kind of a shakeup,
Mhm.
a reset.
That's actually related to the next question, and it makes me wonder if that might be the answer. I was going to ask about like what are the most common challenges that children with varying needs might face in a typical Montessori classroom? Is it the adults' flexibility, and how do you support schools, adults with getting through that?
Yeah, that's the hardest part. That's my aim. That was my aim for the training with adults. It's to help. It's a systematic way. It's an actual recipe, like a curriculum almost, to help adults like back off, like feel supported and back off, because you can't just have like a vacuum. You just can't, like, I think of like meditation and yoga and stuff. You can't just like have nothing. There has to be something. I mean, hold on, I'm getting really too out there. I'll bring it back down. Sorry. My brain does this. Um,
That's
yeah,
right.
so there has to be, it's too hard. It's too advanced if something is too difficult to just do something too different from what they're used to, what we as people are used to. And so teaching us as the adult, I had to go through this too, to how to back off, like how, sorry, that's a little bit harsh for Montessori language, how to sit on our hands or how to back away or how to observe, just simply observe and not be intrusive. That's that's what I train the staff on, and it's really hard because at the same time, I I don't want them to think anything's wrong with them. Nothing, they're not doing anything wrong. Like there's if an adult comes in and they're traditionally trained and they're a teacher or parent educator or behavior technician or whatever their background is, and they come in and they're just so intrusive, and I can't just say, stop, you're being so
Mhm.
intrusive, back off. I can't, that's not, but in my mind, I'm like, take a deep breath. How can I put some distance in between this child and this situation that's happening to protect this child from their in their own learning and growth from the adult trying to, even me too, sometimes I misstep and I don't realize something's going on, and I come over and I realize maybe I've intruded upon some delicate moment. But teaching the other adults who don't know Montessori, the assistants primarily, that is the biggest challenge. So yeah,
Mhm.
it does come back to the flexibility.
I think that, in my time working in schools, like I work with schools now, but when I was full time in schools, particularly as a school leader, supporting the classrooms with children who had specialized needs, I really always found the biggest hurdle to get over was helping the adults to appropriately support children. And again, just like you said, it's not like anybody's doing anything wrong, but we are socialized to want to put a halt to things and stop things and intervene so quickly, but it sometimes it doesn't align with what's best for children.
Yeah.
Um, so within your so going back to some of the things that I got to read about your wonderful organization, you talk about compassionate, strengths-based trauma response in your work. How do these elements incorporate into the way that you do Montessori behavioral services?
Yeah, absolutely. It's all fully connected. So with the observation, I'll try to take you through a little a moment. So if you're watching it from across the classroom and you notice a child is in front of their work, but they're staring off into space, or they're kind of not, you can tell they're not really engaged with their work. They're just maybe the work is prop. You might have heard from some of the trainings. Like you might just notice that something's a little off. And to a regular, like an untrained observer, you would think, oh, this child is working. But because we're Montessorians, we look across the room and we're like, okay, something's off. Well, that something off is the behavior. And so looking at knowing the whole child, knowing their history, knowing their background, looking at the trauma, um, uh, I mean, you don't even have to have trauma background, but it helps. I encourage all teachers to have some kind of trauma course in their background. But there's, if you study Stephen Porges, there's a whole bunch of people out there, but there's this one specific arc, and it will show you like the fight or flight, and then it will describe kind of like behaviors associated with those. So if you see someone kind of like acting out aggressively, they're in like the fight response, and then there's a flight response. I'm just simplifying it right now, but so if you look across the room and you see this child kind of in a shutdown mode, you're going to know. And then you think back in your mind about their maybe family history or whatever, without being judgmental, of course. And then you realize maybe they're in a flight stage. Maybe something happened and they're in like a trauma response. They're kind of unreachable at that point. Like unreachable, meaning like cognitively unteachable at that moment. They have some brain things going on. There's neurological things going on to where a lesson isn't going to help them. So in our training, it's like, okay, we'll be giving 10 lessons a day or whatever, um, giving all these lessons and getting through our work as guides. But part of our work as guides is also to help these children through their education, as an aid to life, especially with all this going on in the world. And now that we know better, we can use this knowledge to help reach a child in a different way.
Hmm.
Um, this was that was just an example. There's so many other examples, hundreds, thousands.
Now, I think this is really helpful. A lot of times, people can have a misunderstanding about behavioral science and feel like it does not mesh well with Montessori because of the way we do things. But I think you show in so many ways that it really does align and it helps support best practice for children. How do you integrate behavioral science principles like human behavior, contextual behavior science into your Montessori practices to create a real functional and meaningful education for children? What does that look like?
Yeah. And I would love to go back to myself 20 plus years ago and see, I find out what I would have answered then. But I'm one of those people. I was very skeptical coming into this work because here I had these children, I have four children. My oldest child went through Montessori. She was more like me, just learning profile, never really struggled. Um, I wanted to find this kind of school that had no limits. I just wanted no ceiling put on her. I didn't want to have to, no compliance based, having ADHD, I have motor issues and I'm constantly, I was doing my master's program, just constantly moving at the gym, reading on the stationary bike, on the treadmill, whatever. Those were my particular needs. So I thought, okay, my daughter is a lot like me. I'm going to take her to this place where she can just be was a big draw for me for Montessori. But then the more I knew about it, the more I realized it would be good for any child. So then when my second child came along and I noticed he had some other developmental issues, kind of like not so much hyperactivity and ADHD, but like he wasn't speaking, he wasn't doing the developmental stuff. So that wasn't being caught at the pediatrician back then. It would have been caught nowadays with the screeners they have now. But then, so Montessori helped to do that. So then, um, you know, the social and all the fine motor and whatever. So with the children, so that's my trajectory. I was very skeptical of behavioral stuff. I didn't I would not have put him in ABA even if that was an option in my day. But it was only after many, many years after they had been through Montessori and I was an assistant in Montessori saving up to go to get trained and watching these children come in with like clear signs of like autism and just mutism and they would come in and we would just do our thing, just as compassionately as can be, as Montessori assistants are trained. We didn't push them out. There was no punishment. They were part of the group, even if they weren't able to respond. And then after like a month or whatever, I'm just making this up, I don't know, after a certain amount of time, they would engage and participate in the class. And we would just all look at each other with mouths agape, like, what is, he's responding, like, oh my gosh, we didn't think he could talk, or we were just loving every minute. And this happened multiple times. It wasn't just once. So for the field of for to answer that question is super complex because I didn't come into the science field like a regular person. I was already studying a different kind of science, natural sciences, before this neurodivergent kind of entered my life with my children. And so, and then Montessori was already part of my life before the behavior stuff. If I had known about the ABA and behavior first, I don't think I would have. No, I would be like the rest of you guys. I would be as anti as anyone else. But because I learned the science, the whole science first, then I saw that what's out there in these corner places, clinics, that's not it's not the science. That's just somebody's business. They're just trying to like, I don't know what they're doing out there, but it's not what the science is all about. And so that worries me. I feel a little bit about there's a parallel with Montessori, because sometimes people stamp the word Montessori, and I'm so scared because I don't want people to think that's what we did, because I'm trying to stay really clear to the Montessori principles. But that is kind of what I see. Like if you're looking around at the store or like on Facebook or social media, and you'll see like these materials that will say Montessori materials, and it's so clearly not a Montessori material. It's
Mhm.
colorful, it's like no isolation happening. And I feel like that's kind of what happened. I don't know. I can't speak to the whole world of that. I just know that when you study like the real science, there's a breadth and a depth and a comprehensive just beauty to it that I never would have discovered on my own, just going to a shop down a clinic down the street to help my child.
So would you say that all ABA is not the same?
I would definitely say that. And I do encourage when people come tour this place as a family, and I encourage them, bring your child, because they're the ones who will ultimately make the decision. If they come in and they feel welcomed and they feel accepted and whatever, supported in whatever way, they're gonna know. They're gonna tell you, show you in some kind of physical way, or whatever, however they show you as a parent. And then I do say, please don't just make up your mind here. We're not a hard sell. Like I'm not here to pressure anyone into, and I don't have contracts or anything with the families or anything. Um, they, I do have them go test out other places nearby. And if they like that better, great. That's great. And if they don't, then that's okay. My feelings aren't hurt. And then because yeah, it's not the same. It's not the same out there.
Mhm. Mhm. I think that piece for me was one of my great learnings over time around like working in Montessori schools, but working with different ABA therapists, working with different programs, was recognizing that like in the early days, like sometimes, oh, this is really working, and sometimes, oh, it feels like there's a challenge here, and I couldn't figure out why. But I think you hit the nail on the head that it can vary.
Definitely, definitely.
So imagine that, well, probably don't even need to imagine. There are thousands of Montessori schools within this country, many more thousands of classrooms because there's some within each school. What is an example of one small environmental adjustment that could make a significant impact for a child's learning behavior that, like, you do at tier three, but somebody could just walk away with and think about doing in their environment?
Yeah, that's good. Oh man, I know. I think yeah, I'd love to give little nuggets. I don't know. Uh, a lot of people, I think I keep coming down to the adult. Okay, I need to get more specific. And I did put some thought into this earlier, but this was the hardest one. This, I will say, just adapting the shelves to reflect their learning, their level of learning, level of, I don't want to say level, it sounds so rude. Um, just their uh, strength. Like if they have an ability, a strength and an ability, we, in Montessori, this comes natural to us. We want to like feed into that ability instead of their like deficit. And
Hmm.
a lot of traditionally trained teachers and assistants will come in and they'll want to try to, uh, I guess, I don't know how to describe it. They'll want to bring in, pictures, which is nothing's wrong with pictures, but they'll want to bring in all these other things to help support the child, but it's not actually supporting the child. I don't know what a good analogy is. I don't know. It's okay to support the child, but it's harder to fade out those supports and toward independence and autonomy if they're like, it's the sticker on the shelf, or if it's a picture of something on the, like, the mind needs to become stronger by this repetition rather than like just relying on list. I don't know. I don't want to, I'm trying to keep it broad so I don't get super specific. But I would just say the strengths, look at each child, look at the child in front of you, because it's not one size fits all. So if I were to give you like one strategy, that it wouldn't work for everyone, and then that somebody would try it and say, okay, this stuff is just bogus. It's not going to work. Behavior science doesn't work. It's really just for each child.
Am I also hearing that, like, a little bit about what you don't need? Like, every child may not need a visual schedule. Every child may not need a visual timer, things of that nature.
Yeah, we don't even have, like, we have technically have a visual timer somewhere. I don't know where it's at, but it's just for, I don't know why. We never use it. Um, the visual schedule, I don't use visual schedules because by the time, sometimes I'll have like a photo or a picture, maybe I'll use it for like a day or two, but it's not, by the time you go to all the trouble to take the pictures and print them out and waste all these resources of time and paper and lamination, it's kind of like you don't need all that. They've already memorized it. You can do it, have them do it 20 times and they'll learn it. They're smart. They can do it. And I work with really, really, some of these children have, they come in with like global developmental delay. They have like severe, like developmental delay for intellectual and cognitive abilities. But if they can learn, like, it's true Montessori, it's right from the beginning. Her first 10 years of work with the special needs children way in Rome, so many years ago, 100 plus years ago, and it still works to this day. So yeah,
Hmm.
just adapt to each child.
That's great. That's great. Um, and so back to the work with families. How do you work with families? How do you collaborate with them when you're thinking about developing individualized plans for their children? And how does that working with them so closely really benefit both the child and the family, within the environment that you're offering?
Yeah, that's true. We do work so closely. Like once a week, we'll have either a family meeting like once a week or once a month. At the most is once a month. Ideally, we try to go for once a week. I know that's a lot. I know there's so many teachers out there like, I don't even like parent conferences twice a year. But yeah, it's not like that. It's, we really need to keep, we, all of us on the team, the team's very small. It's just me and another teacher and a few assistants who are trained. But yeah, we have, um, things happen so quickly with the child with this level of growth and the repetition that we're doing and the variation. It's all very prescribed, but we do it in such a way that's so natural that someone coming in wouldn't know that it's therapy going on. They wouldn't realize, like, because it looks fun and it is fun and it's playful. So this collaboration with the parents is so vital, that there is something in the world of behavior, and I don't want to shout out terms because I know I we've learned that people don't like terms, different language. It's off-putting. So, but there are scientific terms. There's a thing that you'll notice that it's how do I say this without saying it? It's, I can describe it. So, like if someone in one situation in one setting acts differently than in another setting. So,
Hmm.
when they have a particularly rough day at school and kids come home and then they have a meltdown at home. So we want to check in with the families. Please email me immediately. They did so much work today. They were so amazing. They did so great. They showed no signs of what we call withdrawal of assent. So we were checking in on their body language. They were saying yes to everything. Um, so we just kept going, but letting the parents know, if let us know if this was too much, because they might be sleeping a lot tonight. They did so much work, and it's so in any case, if that were to happen, and a parent does say, "What happened at school today?" They were, or at, we call it school, but it's not really school. What happened today because they had a meltdown? I was like, okay, well maybe we'll figure out what could have happened. So we all looked through our notes. We all talked to each other. Sure. Well, maybe there was a tour, and the tour was enough to, because there's like, it's like ripples. Like if you imagine, the lake. a still calm lake, and like one little ripple is going to affect them. They're so sensitive sometimes. So things that we don't pick up on, they pick up on. So we'll
Hmm.
make sure we don't schedule tours on the day they're here for next time. I don't know if
Hmm.
that answers the question.
No, I mean, I think that's great. And I think that's an important point that you bring up that kind of was under the surface, but I think an important one to zero in on, which is that children who are coming home and like letting loose, having a meltdown, it's a clear indicator that something is affecting them from earlier in the day. And I think that's important for us to notice and look at.
Yes, 100%. Absolutely.
Do you come across that a lot with children with varying diagnoses? Like, does it happen more with some than with others? Like, how do you see that coming to pass with children?
That's a really good question. I don't know. I know my own son had it, which I don't know if I would have picked up on that before. But he would come home and they, the teachers would all say he was such a great kid, and then he'd come home and just pretty much go berserk. So where I, as a parent, which I commiserate, I don't know if that's even the right word. That sounds like a harsh word, but I can relate with parents who have this feeling of stress and kind of almost like a PTSD feeling of like, like your body knows what time it is. Like the bus is about to pull up. And so when my child was in middle school, on the bus, um, so I think, okay, I'm going to take all these things that I've learned as a parent, and I'm going to be open to this as a family. When families come in, they might not even realize they're in a state of that heightened stress. I'm sure they know it, but they might not realize it. But yeah, so like, uh, yeah, that differential when you have that contrast, if I can say, um, that's I don't know if it's from ADHD or autism or anxiety, or I have no idea. I would
My
say maybe anxiety. So many of our students have anxiety, so that's probably the one common thread, maybe.
hmm hmm I mean, that would track. One of my two children is the type of child that, I'd always heard at school. My child is a model child. They do all the things, they listen to all the things, they are so kind. And then we see each other in the evening and it's like, oh, this is not the child that I heard about all day. And yeah, I also assume like anxiety might be a thread there as well. So I can relate for sure. And saw it countless times over the years with children in school. What is the role that parents, who are experiencing these things and needing to communicate with you, what is the role that parents play in their development when it comes to your program? So, how do you make sure that parent values, parent goals, parent needs and interests come together with what it is that you want to do as they're moving through this process?
Yeah, absolutely. And that has a lot to do with the other question too about that contrast, that yes. So if a child, so I do make sure they tour and realize the kind of program we put together is child led, assent based. So assent meaning that we don't really have hard no's here. Like you're not gonna find a lot of hard no if it's dangerous to them or to someone else, then we'll say no and we'll redirect. But other than that, we're a restraint free place, and that just means they get to vote with their feet. And it means they don't if they don't want to. We're gonna practice. They're gonna have some practice doing different things during the day. We're not just gonna let them sit there and not do anything all day. We're gonna keep practicing and inviting them to work or to different activities, as what we call work. But as far as like a family fit, we do find that families who really want a hard like rules, like kind of like so
Can you fix
one of the things that I'd like to say that we specialize in is the PDA. Like I don't know if you guys have heard of it. It's pathological demand avoidance, but that's not a good word. That's what it's called, but it's pervasive drive for autonomy. This is one of the kind of branches of autism that is kind of becoming more popular. That's the one
Hmm.
my son has. I didn't know this. I didn't know the words for this. I didn't know this was a thing. I just knew all the other parenting educational styles weren't working for my own child. So, so low demand parenting is what's called for in this situation. But so that's kind of in line with what we do here is low demand, but it doesn't mean no demand. Like we still invite the child to do things. We're not just gonna let them fall through the cracks. So, okay, to come back to your question. Oh, to make sure that's a good fit, we really just have to have conversations with the parents and make sure they know. And then again, we have kind of an open door policy, letting them know we don't have contracts. If at any point this is not a good fit, just please let's both part ways and wish each other
Hmm.
the best. And they're usually back in about a year. So,
Well, it makes so much sense. I think that in general in Montessori, I I've used this saying since I got out of training and people have asked about like, is Montessori right for every child? Like, I don't know if it's right for X type of child or Y type of child. And my response has always been, Montessori is right for every child. It's not right for every family because those
yeah,
values have to connect, right? So, so important. Um,
yeah.
One of the things that you do that I am such a fan of is the social skills development, because oftentimes we see with children who are neurodivergent that one of the big hills to climb is around how they relate to peers. How do you address peer interactions with small group settings, the social skills camps? What does that look like?
Yeah, that is one of my favorite things too, because in Montessori, that is such a huge part, right? It's, well, in the elementary, I'm elementary trained, so that is huge. So if a child comes in and they're isolating themselves, we have a major problem. Like as the adults, we have a problem because
Mhm.
now it's our work to facilitate these discussions or these collaborations, whether it's with work or table work or mat work or floor work or whatever, big work out in the hallway, whatever. We have to facilitate that, and it's so hard because so now that's what we do here is it's such a small program, so it doesn't have the overwhelm of 25, 30 children. It just has, there's two other options. There's you pick this person to work with or this person to work with, and then that's it. It's like they don't have to worry about a lot of noise, and they can, again, just like a Montessori environment, they can work anywhere, they can choose wherever, and it's also short duration. So whereas in Montessori, in a regular Montessori classroom, the expectation might be for the children to go out and work for by themselves for 30 plus minutes alone. We don't have that expectation because we know they're building that skill. That's their big work, is to just be in the same proximity. So what we do is we have, I don't have it in front of me, but we have like things that you can imagine, like I can't even remember what page it's on, but when Dr. Maria Montessori was doing her graph, right, with her little false fatigue and whatever. So what we do is we measure. Sorry, the wind is blowing. I'm making the weird gestures again. Sorry to block the wind. Um, you can imagine what we're doing is tracking like how long they're working with a friend, like in the same room. Like, okay, great, this is cool. Now let's try to see if they can work a little closer, or maybe work, find something that they both have in common, the special interest. And that's how we run our social groups too, is sometimes children will come in and they only know how to be aggressive with another peer. They see someone else, and we have a playroom. We have like a really cool like it's not cool. It's just small, but they can play and be loud in there and wild and rough. Not in any of the other places where there's wood floor or work, but in this one special room they can go be loud and play a little more rough. But that is the place where if they start to be kind of aggressive with each other, as one example, um, they we can facilitate to turn it into a game, like turn it into play. Whereas in a Montessori classroom, we don't have that luxury. If two people are brawling over in the middle on the corner, we can't like just stop our lessons to go over there. Or it's usually the assistant who's tasked with policing that area. And it's kind of like, what do? They have to go outside. Usually, the assistant will take them outside to not disturb everyone else's work. It doesn't really address the social because it kind of it's a little punitive because it's like take this thing that you're trying to connect with another human. You don't really know how to do it yet. You're doing it because you're fighting and aggressive, but we can work with that because it's showing you have an interest in another person. We just need to make it a little less painful, I guess.
Hmm.
So right now it's not a blame, it's not anybody's fault. And you know this as an administrator, just for safety's sake, we can't allow this in the classroom. We just can't. Uh,
Right,
so
right.
that's really hard.
It's
I don't
like I
know if that
envision,
answers the question.
it's helpful. It makes me envision like, imagine you're in um, a typical Montessori classroom and you have some children who are really struggling with that peer engagement. You kind of bring in the walls, so to speak, so that it's doable and manageable for them, so until they get to a point that they feel more comfortable branching out. Would that be the case? Great,
Absolutely, 100%. Yes.
great. Um, and then within your environment, like from all that you've shared, it seems to me you must have a lot of Montessori materials. How do you tailor the materials or the methods to work with children, particularly when you're doing stuff one-on-one? If you're elementary trained and, typically you have groups of 5 children learning together, what does that look like when you're doing it one-on-one?
Yeah, I've had to really learn that. So when in some of my first Montessori classroom experiences, I did find myself doing kind of a lot of more one-on-one than was in my albums. I was constantly going home at the end of each day, scouring like, what did I miss? Like, what am I doing wrong? Like, I would have those larger groups, but then I would always have a few that just I couldn't quite seem to connect with the work. It would have to be a little bit remedial or something, and I had more. It seemed like I had more and more, um,
Mhm.
depending on the school I was at. And so then that I without knowing it, maybe that helped here because now it's natural. Now I'm okay with that. And so now drawing in a new friend is the next level up. Whereas before, there I go talking about levels again. That whereas before, where it seemed like, oh no, what am I doing wrong as a guide? I'm giving so many one-on-one lessons when I should be giving large group lessons all the time. But then now it's the reverse. But yeah, we do have Montessori materials. I do have to adapt quite a bit and have a lot of actually primary, uh, like think of the puzzle map, the continent map, even. I mean, really simple stuff in cylinder blocks, for fine motor and just it's like what else do I have in there? I do have like the pink tower, of course, like little the brown stair. I do have primary materials, and I'm not primary trained. I've only had the foundation course, so that makes me a little bit. I am planning to take a primary training. I've been saying that for a long time, but I do adapt. We do adapt. Uh, they don't need the one-on-one forever. That's another concern is like, well, they're in the second plane, they need to have social. They do have social in other ways, but when it comes to the work, they do need a remediation and uh, they do need a little bit of one-on-one. So I do
Mhm.
try to follow my albums, but sometimes there's people that I work with who need even more beginning skills than are in the album.
Mhm. And I think so often over the years, I've heard many times, like, when you move on to elementary, like, you got to keep those primary materials in the primary, and it's really important that they have access to all the elementary materials, which is true. And what you've just shared makes me think that, like, when a child is challenged with a need that makes them developmentally functioning at the level of a primary material, those materials might be more appropriate for said child to build that skill.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
And then one of the things that you emphasize is the importance of being in tune with a child's nervous system regulation. How does that affect your approach to designing what these experiences looks like for children? And more about what
Yeah.
exactly does that mean, their nervous system regulation?
Yeah. So that is more of like the fight or flight we were talking about earlier with the
Mhm.
trauma responses, because they may not even be aware of what's going on inside their bodies. And then we, as the adult, we can look and notice if they're getting agitated. And now a lot of times it's super simple, like they just need a bathroom break and they didn't know that. Their bodies weren't ready to tell them the signal that they need a bathroom break or food or water. I mean, something super simple, or just get up and stretch or something. Like a lot of times with autism, and we had one of the teachers, one of our teachers here was had their, I don't know what they call them, like their teacher trainer was here observing them, and with one of the students, they needed some physical feedback, like their bodies need like proprioception, like physical pressure kind of thing. So with her, she like squeezes and hugs and pressure, like pressure. So in the Montessori classroom, you won't really see stuff like that. But yeah, she'll just come up and she'll ask for squeeze or this. She'll put her hands out like this, and so she knows we lock hands, and she'll push against me or another adult for a few times, and she'll go back to doing whatever she was doing. So the nervous system too is like it's. I don't know enough about it. I always need to learn more and more and more, but it's, and I can't put stories behind why people get dysregulated, but if they're showing signs of like wanting to relieve that stress, I don't know. I fidget a lot, so I use that as like I'm reading more like that's just a regulation, which here I just grew up my whole life thinking I just like love to move, which I do, but if I focus that on a child and use that compassion of like they just need to move. So some kids just never sit down. Some children never even sit. So the
Mhm.
nervous system, right? Yeah. So we just have to give them alternative places to work standing.
I think that I've taken a lot away about like meeting children's specific needs, like bringing in their environment and experiences so it suits them. So, as broad strokes, if you were to speak to Montessorians across the country, across the world, who are working in typical Montessori environments, what is one big takeaway they can have from what you're doing at Tier 3 that would help them within their practice?
Oh yeah, definitely a scent-based behavior. Just use your observations in the classroom. You're already doing this. And you're possibly going the extra mile and you're writing down in your notebook, your observation journal, and you have a narrative about a child. So all we do here is we're observing just like you, and we are taking the verbs, the action words, those predicates you're going to see in your sentence. If you want to even go so far as to take a highlighter, I know maybe you don't want to mess up your work. You can take a photocopy, scan it, whatever. Highlight the verbs, okay? These will give you an objective photo, a picture of, I don't know, a pattern that you can start to detect of what you're picking up, because there is observer bias. You're going to pick up on certain things and not always the strengths. You might only be writing down the negative things. So maybe I would challenge you to, with the assent based approach, we look at what the child's strengths are and what they want. We start from that place of joy, start from what they love. And we are a screen free environment. So I know there's a lot of talk about every child is addicted to screens, but with that said, it's not impossible. Like it doesn't hinder anything um, with the prepared environment. You can get over that. So just keep your observations going, and then check out those verbs.
Wow.
That's it.
Great. Thank you so much. This is so great. I feel like I've learned so much during our time together. If anybody, sees this and would like to learn more from you because you do consulting with schools and you support training people, how can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, sure. Just email me directly. It says admin. Um, it was someone else's email, but it's mine. It goes direct to me, no one else. Admin, ADMIN, at tier3montessori.com, TIER, number 3, and then MO. Oh, you guys know how to spell Montessori. Other people don't, but Montessori. Um, yeah, so tier three just means one-on-one and small group Montessori. That's all.
Oh,
Thanks.
that's so great. Thank you so much for spending time with me today. I really appreciate it. This has been great. Once again, thank you for joining us on the Montessori microphone for Montessori Makers podcast. I hope everyone has a great day.